Welcome to Books in Sum, your go-to for bite-sized book summaries.
Wired for Love by Stephanie Cacioppo. This bite of Stephanie Cacioppo's book Wired for Love explores the science of love from a scientific point of view. It reveals the surprising factors that drive attraction, how to decide between two romantic partners, and why our brain panics when we lose the person we love. The most important idea is that love starts, grows, flourishes, and ends in the brain. Attraction is well understood by biologists, and we can assess the suitability of a prospective mate within less than 200 milliseconds of first seeing them. Another factor that drives attraction is ourselves, and one study showed that participants photoshopped onto the bodies of the opposite gender failed to recognize themselves and rated their own photo as the most attractive of the bunch. The most important details in this book are that when we fall in love, our brains release a cascade of neurotransmitters and chemicals that have a major effect on our mood and the way we perceive the world. Falling in love triggers a region of the brain called the ventral tegmental area, which pumps dopamine into the brain and triggers the same regions that are activated when we eat delicious food or drink wine. It also increases the production of norepinephrine, which distorts our perception of time. And serotonin levels drop, which can cause irregular eating patterns or obsessive thoughts about the person we're in love with. Finally, physical contact with a lover triggers the release of oxytocin, the hormone that increases feelings of empathy and trust. It is unclear if love is just about helping us identify and pair with a mate, or if there is something more going on. Stephanie conducted a love machine experiment on women who declared that they were madly in love with their partners. The results showed that people performed significantly better after being primed with the name of their beloved partner rather than their friend. The author theorized that this was due to the way the brain is interconnected, and that when Blake's name flashed in front of the screen, it excited the neurons, sent out dopamine, and stimulated the connections between different areas of the student's brain. This also triggered more recently evolved, sophisticated areas of the brain, such as the angular gyrus, which evolved in our brains only recently. Love is a universal phenomenon, hardwired into human nature. It enhances creative performance, helps us tackle intellectual challenges, and even makes us better at assessing the mental states of strangers. It is also good for our bodies, as people in satisfying, healthy long-term relationships have better sleep and immune functions, exhibit fewer addictive behaviors, and experience fewer strokes. Additionally, love works the same for everyone regardless of whether they're a man or a woman, gay, straight, or trans. John Cacioppo's first words to Stephanie, who would go on to become his wife, were "If I start snoring, punch me." They were at a neuroscience conference, and John was renowned for his work on the neurobiology of loneliness. John and Stephanie talked for 3 hours straight, late into the night. And they couldn't stop saying "me, too," and "I know." If the two of them had been hooked up to EEG machines, they would have seen their brain waves synchronizing. It seemed like a match made in heaven. Studies have shown that when people are made to play a mirror game, they find each other more attractive than otherwise. This is due to the activation of the mirror neuron system, or MNS, which lights up when we act and when we see someone else performing the same action. Mirror neurons don't just mirror the actions of others, but they also sense the intent and motivation behind the actions as well. In the 1960s, psychologist Dorothy Tennov surveyed 500 individuals on their romantic preference and found that 61% of the women and 35% of the men agreed with the statement that they could be in love without feeling any physical desire. This suggests that love and lust are fairly separable, but on a neurobiological level, the line between the two is much blurrier. Recent neuroscientific research suggests that one unified brain network may be responsible for both love and lust. Stephanie scanned the brains of 29 young women who had previously scored high on a passionate love scale and found that the more they felt emotionally close to their partners, the more likely they were to say they were physically satisfied with their partners. The area of the brain that was most activated in these women's brains was one called the insula, which plays a key role in self-awareness and helps us understand the things we're craving at a given moment. However, physical desire doesn't light up the whole insula, just a specific, isolated part toward the back of this brain region. This suggests that love and lust are not opposing forces, but instead operate as a kind of seesaw, with physical desire providing the fuel for love to grow and love feeding some of itself back into lust. Studies show that, over time, couples tend to lose the lusty passion that first drew them to one another. However, most people in relationships see physical intimacy as an essential part of a relationship. The insula needs both an intense physical connection and a deep emotional connection in order to be fully fired up, so couples may be able to find non-sexual methods of getting the posterior parts of the insula to fire. To do this, they can come up with new recipes, cook together, and share meals. Grief and loss can have deadly consequences for the body and mind, with health risks shooting up in the 24-hour period immediately after a loss. Broken heart syndrome is a rare condition in which acute stress can change the shape of the heart's main pumping chamber and cause extreme pain. Months after a loss, people are still at risk for various bad health conditions. In the 6-month period after losing their spouses, widowers are 40% more likely to die than married people of the same age. This is due to the elevated risk of developing cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. For most people, grief begins to get better within 6 to 12 months, but about 10% of those who lose a loved one can't move past it a year later. This is called complicated grief, and it is dangerous for our bodies and minds. UCLA psychiatrist Mary Frances O'Connor and her colleagues conducted a study that revealed the difference between complicated and uncomplicated grief. In patients with complicated grief, a certain part of their brain's dopamine-driven reward system was activated when faced with the photograph, while in patients without complicated grief, the brain understood that a photograph of their loved one was not a signal of a reward to come but rather a memory of someone who is gone. This is important to understand because people with complicated grief often try to deal with their pain by avoiding thinking about the person they lost. A much better way of dealing with the pain is by facing and processing their grief. Stephanie learned a valuable lesson from skydiving when she was in Switzerland a year after her husband John's passing. The instructor explained that screaming when exiting the plane would help her accept and deal with the fear and discomfort. Stephanie screamed inside the plane, outside of the plane, and the entire way down to the ground, and realized that those 40 seconds were the best of her life since she'd lost her husband. Love is an essential part of the human experience, but its loss can be disastrous to our health. To avoid loneliness, it is important to take active steps to avoid it, such as volunteering with a local charity and asking someone to help you. Being shown respect and trusted can help a lonely person feel an increased sense of worth and reduce their perceived isolation.
We hope you found this summary helpful in your listening journey. If you're interested in diving deeper into the topic or getting your hands on the whole book, be sure to check the description below where we've included links to the book and other related products that may be useful to you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest book summaries, and feel free to leave a comment with any suggestions or requests for books you'd like us to cover. Thanks again for tuning in and happy listening.